Entry 1. Today marks the first official meeting of the delegation. As instructed, I've begun documenting the proceedings, although I must admit I question the necessity. The humans we are meeting aren't exactly a mysterious or withdrawn species. However, the elaborate precautions they undertook before even responding to our initial communication were, frankly, bewildering. For context, I've heard rumors that our simple message, designed to initiate peaceful contact, nearly plunged them into a civil war. Apparently, some factions believed it was bait for an elaborate trap. This begs the question, is paranoia a natural trait of their species, or have they encountered another alien civilization that left them scarred? Based on what I've observed so far, I'd suspect the former. Interestingly, their military presence is significant, especially for a species confined to a single star system. Their sheer number of troops and ships is disproportionate to what one might expect from their circumstances. It makes me wonder whether this militarization stems from internal conflict or a preparation for threats beyond their home system. Entry 2. Today brought a surprising development. Instead of a military leader, the humans sent a civilian diplomat to represent their interests. This choice caught me off guard because humans appear to place considerable emphasis on military strength and strategy. Why then would they choose someone from the civilian sphere for such an important role? Curious about this diplomat was chosen through a brief voting period. Strangely, this vote wasn't open to the general population but was instead restricted to national leaders. To me, this indicates potential delays and inefficiencies in their decision-making processes, especially for a spacefaring species. After all, having national leaders in charge of interstellar diplomacy could complicate coordination and timeliness. Still, the diplomat himself seems competent and measured. His demeanor suggests careful consideration, though I can't help but wonder how much influence he truly wields compared to their military hierarchy. Entry 3. The human delegation expanded today, with additional diplomats arriving aboard their ships. They brought with them stacks of portable computers, each filled with vast amounts of data. Fortunately, our translation systems had already adapted to their primary language, allowing us to quickly process and understand the contents of these devices. The humans, it seems, are eager to learn as much as they can about us. In exchange, they've provided an astonishing wealth of information about their own species, historical records, linguistic nuances, and even star maps. Their openness is both impressive and puzzling. After all, this is the same species that almost fractured over the fear of our initial contact being a trap. Why are they now so willing to share such sensitive information? Could it be that our outreach caused a shift in their perspective, leading them to adopt transparency as a means of building trust? Or perhaps they see this as a strategic exchange, hoping to gain more from us than they lose by sharing. Entry 4. It's been several weeks since I last updated this log. Most of my time has been consumed by analyzing the vast amount of data provided by the humans. Their history is both fascinating and unsettling. From what I've gathered, humanity has been in a near constant state of internal conflict since their earliest days. Wars have erupted over reasons that seem trivial to us. Differences in religion, disputes over territory, and even personal ambitions. Astonishingly, nearly 1/5 of their most significant technological advancements, including their relativistic drive systems, originated from military research. This revelation sheds light on their behavior. Their openness might stem from a shared recognition of the devastating consequences of secrecy and mistrust. After all, they've endured more internal strife in the past millennium than my species has in its entire existence. Hey everyone, the scale of their losses is unimaginable to us, and yet they persist, driven by an almost unfathomable resilience. Entry 5. 9 weeks have passed since our initial contact. and the human response to our presence has settled into a routine. At first, their reactions ranged from sheer panic to overwhelming joy, but now their focus has shifted back to their own domestic concerns. Humans have colonized multiple celestial bodies within their star system, including a second planet and several moons. Each of these colonies has developed its own unique culture and way of life. Despite these differences, their initial response to our contact was remarkably uniform. Widespread shock followed by a wave of emotional extremes adequately recognized all the responsible people in the world. What surprises me most is how quickly they've adjusted. News articles on their networks are now more focused on entertainment, economic issues, and domestic politics than on our presence. Does this mean they're simply more comfortable in familiar routines, or are they growing impatient with the slow progress of our negotiations? I've noticed that while the humans I've interacted with seem unconcerned, our ambassador has become increasingly uneasy. The contrast between their outward calm and our internal apprehension is striking. Продолжай епера работку оставшихся дух записи, добавляя детали и расширяя text. Today brought an unexpected relief. The human ambassador sought me out for an informal conversation aboard our ship. His approach was surprisingly personal. He mentioned noticing my growing concern about the pace and tone of the negotiations. This caught me off guard, as it's been less than 100 of their solar cycles since our two species first made contact. How could he, with so little exposure to our kind, discern my emotional state? When I voiced this question, he simply smiled and said it was part of his training as a diplomat. Intrigued, I decided to be candid with him. I confessed my confusion about the apparent indifference of the human population on their planets. Their initial reaction to our presence had been intense, yet now they seemed almost apathetic. The ambassador explained that while some humans were undoubtedly anxious or excited, the majority had adopted a wait-and-see approach. He suggested that their species has a unique ability to compartmentalize emotions and prioritize immediate concerns over distant possibilities. His next point was even more striking. He explained that even if our species were to join their galactic community, the day-to-day lives of most humans wouldn't change drastically. Galactic politics, new technologies, colonization opportunities, those things are fascinating, he said. But most of us will still choose to live where we are, doing what we've always done. He said, galactic politics. Those things are up to us. When I pressed him further, pointing out the extensive colonization of their system, he laughed. It's different, he said. When you can look out your window and still see Earth, it doesn't feel like you're that far from home. Entry 7. Communication between our species has reached a new level of sophistication. Our translators have been refined to the point where they can capture not just the literal meaning of human speech, but also its subtleties and nuances. This development has transformed our interactions. The human ambassador in particular seemed relieved by this breakthrough. He admitted that he had been carefully avoiding idiomatic expressions, slang, and cultural references during our conversations. The last thing I'd want, he said, is to use a phrase that makes perfect sense to another human but comes across as nonsensical, or worse, offensive to your people. She grinned. She added with lime. Now with the improved translation systems, he feels more confident speaking freely. This has led to a noticeable increase in the pace and depth of our discussions. However, I can't help but wonder whether this accelerated dialogue might complicate the already delicate negotiations. Today, the ambassador brought up one of the most contentious topics yet: faster-than-light travel. Typically, a species develops this technology on its own before engaging in interstellar diplomacy. Humans, however, are an exception. They've managed to colonize their entire star system, 7 inhabited bodies, and countless more explored or exploited without it. Their ingenuity is undeniable. Over a third of their population lives on orbital platforms, supported by an industrial network that processes resources from asteroids and moons. This self-sufficiency is impressive, but it also raises questions. If they've thrived in such conditions, how would they adapt to the abundance that FTL travel could bring? They'll request access to our FTL technology soon. Their adaptability is both their greatest strength and a potential source of concern. Entry 8. Our first contact with the humans was as delicate as the unfolding of a fragile flower. The atmosphere in the chamber was thick with apprehension, both sides uncertain of the other's intentions. The humans, however, insisted on sending us their most learned and trusted representative, a man who introduced himself simply as the ambassador. His attire was striking yet understated, a combination of dark fabrics adorned with a symbol of Earth that radiated both pride and humility. And the ambassador, I don't remember how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry, Sansapu. Atokwa Pere Matiatal. When he spoke, his tone was measured, his words chosen carefully, as though navigating an uncharted linguistic landscape. While the exchange was brief, his willingness to listen more than he spoke gave us an unusual sense of hope. Could this truly be the beginning of mutual understanding? I'm as well. The human ambassador has proven to be an extraordinary learner, spending countless hours immersed in our cultural archives. His ability to absorb our history, philosophy, and customs is nothing short of remarkable. Yet his questions reveal much about his own kind. "What are your oldest myths?" he asked today, his gaze intense but not unkind. "How do you resolve disputes when words fail?" Such inquiries suggest not just curiosity, but a quest to find parallels, perhaps to justify their actions or to forge a connection. While his persistence is admirable, I sense an undercurrent of calculation. Does he seek to unite us, or does he view us as a riddle to unravel? Some great entry points. Yeah, as Jin mentioned as an entry point, 310. Today brought an unexpected moment of levity during our discussions. The ambassador, in an apparent attempt to lighten the mood, shared a proverb from his world: "You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink." Confusion rippled through the room as none of us had the faintest concept of a horse. He explained it was an ancient, domesticated creature used for travel and labor, details that seemed as alien to us as we must appear to him. For centuries, music served this perfect representation of great grandeur. Despite our initial confusion, his explanation elicited something rare: laughter. It was hesitant and awkward, but it bridged the divide between us, if only for a fleeting moment. Could humor, after all, be a universal language? I gave you offended. Entry web. The revelation today left us astounded. As we delved deeper into humanity's technological history, we discovered their early forays into the cosmos were as bold as they were reckless. Their spacecraft, rudimentary by our standards, lacked the safety and precision we consider essential, yet they dared to journey beyond their atmosphere. What struck us most was their use of nuclear propulsion, a technology both powerful and perilous. They spoke of it with pride, but also caution, acknowledging the countless lives it could endanger if mishandled. Their willingness to embrace such risks in pursuit of progress speaks volumes about their spirit, resilience, determined, and perhaps dangerously ambitious. Entry 12. The ambassador's efforts to bridge the gap between our species took a poignant turn today. He shared images of Earth's natural beauty, vast oceans, sprawling forests, and skies painted with colors we had never seen. "This is what we fight for," he said, his voice carrying a note of solemnity. "Not just survival, but the preservation of what makes life worth living. The sincerity in his tone silenced the room. He puzzled his eyes. Silenced the room. For all their flaws, humans seem to possess a deep connection to their world, a bond that drives their innovation, their resilience, and their conflict. It left us wondering, can a species so entwined with their own planet truly adapt to a place among the stars? Entry 13. 50 days have passed since the asteroid incident, and the human reaction has been both surprising and concerning. Across their system, civilian populations and various military factions are clamoring for action. Opinions are wildly divided. Some demand formal apologies from the human diplomats for what they see as their role in this catastrophe, even though the humans clearly had no direct control over the event. Others argue for retaliation against us, claiming we should suffer for the perceived transgression. Still others indulge in increasingly wild speculation, filling the vacuum left by official narratives. Above this din, the human ambassador has taken a completely different approach to the negotiations. His focus has shifted dramatically. Where he once inquired about topics as diverse as galactic agricultural laws, faster-than-light FTL drives, and the origins of our linguistic peculiarities, he now seems fixated on one subject: the justice systems of the galaxy. When asked by his own people, those outside his delegation, what his stance on the asteroid incident might be, his responses are cryptic and puzzling. Patience is a virtue, never close doors you cannot open, invite no conflict where none exists, yellow is most flavorful. The last statement in particular confounds me. Perhaps our translators still struggle with certain euphemisms, or perhaps it is an idiomatic expression with no direct equivalent in our language. Regarding the possession of nuclear devices, the ambassador has, quite unprompted, sought to reassure us. He emphasized that over 150 years have passed since any nuclear device was used in warfare by humans. This assurance has somewhat eased my fears. Discrete scans of the complex that launched the device, used to divert the asteroid, revealed their strongest nuclear weapons are only 6 times more powerful than the one deployed. But while capable of damaging our defensive fields, they pose no existential threat to us. Still, I remind myself, these humans are potential allies, not enemies. As the ambassador himself said, invite no conflict where none exists. Entry 14. Humans continue to amaze me with their capacity to ignore turmoil. 250 days have passed since our first contact, and their media has already reduced its focus on both us and the asteroid incident. Instead, they are returning to what, I am told, with thinly veiled disgust by their ambassador, is the norm. Music, banal daily news, and even strange broadcasts that seem aimed at addressing reproductive isolation, a concept I can barely begin to understand. It's remarkable that in less than a year, humans have encountered alien life, faced near catastrophe due to our actions, and yet absorbed all of it with an astonishing degree of blasé acceptance. Tomorrow, we are scheduled to tour Earth itself. Naturally, we will wear full bodysuits, despite their atmosphere being breathable for us. The increased ultraviolet and radiation from their sun makes such precautions necessary. At first, I suspected these measures were to prevent inadvertent offense, but I've noticed some human ambassadors appear genuinely angry at our presence. I recall one particularly striking moment. On the very first day, their chief ambassador made an almost pleading request that we neither decrypt nor translate any of the millions of messages sent to our ship unless they bore his explicit authorization. The intensity of this request and the reactions of some of his peers remains unexplained. Entry 15. It has been 45 days since our arrival on Earth, and I find myself in awe of the human spirit. Their cities, sprawling and diverse, reflect a species of boundless ambition and creativity. Yet beneath this exterior lies a stark juxtaposition. For every technological marvel, there exists a shadow of inequality and conflict. One particular visit left a lasting impression. The ambassador arranged a tour of a site they called the Library of Congress, a monumental archive of human knowledge and culture. Its vast halls overflowed with stories, inventions, and ideas, both inspiring and cautionary. Their history is one of constant struggle, yet within those struggles lie moments of profound triumph. So, the human ambassador spoke with unbridled enthusiasm, weaving narratives of his people's resilience. Yet, as he spoke, I noted an undercurrent of hesitation. It was clear that even he was aware of the fragility of their current unity. Entry 16. A concerning development has arisen. During a private conversation, the human ambassador confessed a troubling truth. Not all factions on Earth support these negotiations. While the United Nations ostensibly represents humanity as a whole, there are groups, both governmental and independent, actively opposing integration with the Confederation. Today, fear losing a world they control and share shortly after his release. The first was a major rivalry. There are 450,000 people in the US now. 1 out of every 10 of them came from people that conspired with an unnamed unfriendly alien. Its dissent was a wave of his hand, stating that such dissent is part of the human experience. Zato Hayek, I cannot help but wonder, if humanity cannot unite in the face of this unprecedented opportunity, how will they stand against the greater threats beyond their world? Entry 17. Today marked a critical juncture in our diplomatic mission. The ambassador invited us to observe a session of the United Nations General Assembly. It was a spectacle unlike anything I have witnessed. Delegates from over 190 nations debated fiercely, their voices rising and falling in a cacophony of languages and perspectives. While their passion was admirable, the disarray was disheartening. Even on matters of existential importance, such as our proposal for Earth's integration into the Confederation, there was no consensus. Some nations advocated enthusiastically, citing the need for external support to address humanity's challenges. Others resisted, questioning our intentions and their readiness to join an interstellar community. As the session adjourned, I spoke privately with the ambassador. His expression was weary but resolute. "This is how we've always done things," he said. "Messy, chaotic, but eventually we figure it out." I hope he is correct. Entry 18. An unexpected opportunity presented itself today. During a tour of a human aerospace facility, we were introduced to one of their orbital defense projects. It was primitive by our standards, but the ingenuity behind it was undeniable. They are a species accustomed to achieving much with little, a trait that may serve them well in the Confederation. However, the visit took a grim turn when a member of the facility's staff voiced a shocking sentiment. "Why should we trust aliens to save us when we can't even trust each other?" The ambassador quickly intervened, offering a measured response about the potential for mutual growth and understanding. Yet the damage was done. This moment, coupled with the persistent hostility we've observed in their communications, underscores a sobering truth. Humanity's greatest enemy is often itself. Despite these challenges, I remain hopeful. Their ambassador continues to champion our cause, and there are those among their people who see the stars as more than a distant dream. Entry 19. 300 solar days have passed since the humans first responded to our communications. Our meetings now alternate between their planet's surface and space. Surprisingly, I've come to enjoy our time on their world. There's an unspoken charm in observing these people up close that wasn't immediately apparent during our initial interactions. So I found that convincing come June in the hotel. A particularly candid conversation with one of their diplomatic aides revealed something fascinating. This young woman admitted that many humans were raised on fictional stories where humanity was cast as either the noble defender against alien invasion or the hapless victim of incomprehensible destruction. The idea that alien life might actually be friendly, willing to sacrifice for their sake, was a profound relief to her. I hadn't considered this perspective before. Most species we've encountered are either open to us immediately or distrustful for only a short time. Humans, on the other hand, seemed deeply suspicious until we demonstrated our willingness to sacrifice ourselves for their planet. This single act appears to have achieved far more than we realized. Still, humans seem to place excessive importance on appearances and propriety. I hope this young woman isn't reprimanded for her openness, as our exchange was entirely informal. Yet, I sense the human ambassador becoming increasingly guarded, exerting more control over what we see and hear of his people. Entry 20. I now fully understand why the human ambassador was so insistent on restricting our access to their communications. Our ship's crew, operating without approval from the diplomatic delegation, has been covertly compiling and translating many of the unauthorized messages sent to us. While we have always monitored humanity's indirect broadcasts, tapping into their system-wide information networks since first detecting their radio transmissions, these direct messages were another matter. Out of respect for the ambassador's fervent requests, we had refrained from decrypting them. What the crew discovered was deeply troubling. Among these unauthorized transmissions were messages filled with such vitriol, hatred, and terrorized accusations that, had I not spent over 300 local days immersing myself in their culture, I might have mistaken them for declarations of war. The ambassador will need to account for this. Entry 21. Today, we confronted the human ambassador about the messages. To minimize discomfort, the meeting took place aboard our ship rather than on Earth. Only a small group was present: the ambassador, his second-in-command, our ship's captain, our ambassador, and myself. And I think it's a great drawing. Here's my sleeve. We began without words, simply placing transcripts of the translated messages before him. At first, he picked them up with a look of curiosity, flipping through the pages. Slowly, his complexion paled, a fascinating chemical reaction unique to his species. Like his second could not even look at the documents for long, her expression one of visible distress. After a moment of silence, our ambassador broke it by asking him directly, "What do you have to say on behalf of the people who sent these messages?" The human ambassador stared at the table for several long seconds before replying in a subdued tone, "I wish they did not exist." The room fell silent again. Three of us sat across from two human diplomats who now looked as if they were gravely ill. Finally, our ambassador asked the question that needed clarification: the people or the messages? Excuse me, great, it's not the messages, the people are the messages. People, the human ambassador replied sadly. People so afraid of what's unfamiliar that they hate it. It's an instinct we should have shed by now. Entry 22. The human ambassador appeared disarmed, perhaps even resigned, as the meeting continued. The ship's captain, visibly disturbed by the threatening nature of some of the messages, addressed him next. Some of these people are openly threatening violence against the diplomats under my protection. Why should I permit that? The ambassador's second bristled slightly at the word permit, but remained silent. The ambassador himself, however, seemed unfazed. Humans are tribal by nature, he began. We did not evolve as the apex predator of our world, so we treat cultures and threats we do not understand with intense skepticism. Why do you think we allowed you to visit Earth after the asteroid incident? You demonstrated a virtue we hold dear, the willingness to sacrifice for others. It's easier to relate to someone who behaves like you. Then why do the hateful messages persist? I pressed. Because, the ambassador sighed, the human race is fractious by design. We don't think with one mind or share one opinion. That's why we still have organizations like the United Nations, because more humans in a room mean more inevitable disagreements. Despite the gravity of the discussion, he managed a weak smile. Honestly, it's the only thing that makes human diplomacy bearable. Educated minds thrive on disagreements. But these messages aren't disagreements, they're declarations of hate, I countered. He shook his head. Many humans are products of intolerant ideologies or flawed upbringings. They're simply wrong and suppress such ideas, the captain suggested. Never, the ambassador replied firmly. All humans of significance agree on this. Everyone has the right to be wrong. Suppression only makes bad ideas more attractive to those who feel disenfranchised. Entry 23. 11 lunar cycles, just over 300 local days, have passed since I first arrived. Human diplomats have ceased pressing for FTL drive technology altogether, perhaps realizing it will not be shared. This has allowed us to engage with their leaders directly, bypassing the layers of proxies and intermediaries. At the ambassador's suggestion, we used humanity's advanced instantaneous broadcasting network to address their population directly. It's the exact same principle that made us so awesome back when we fought the misguides. Initially, I was hesitant, simplifying our explanations to the lowest common denominator, as the ambassador put it, seemed an insult to their intelligence. However, he assured me that humans, as a collective, deeply resent being spoken to as if they already understand everything. Clarity, not assumption, fosters trust. In our address, we explained who we were: a confederation of species dedicated to mutual defense and peaceful integration. We outlined our reasons for withholding FTL technology, emphasizing the dangers it posed when wielded without due consideration. The response from humanity was fascinating. Questions poured in, ranging from the mundane, "What is your homeworld called?" to the philosophical, "What drives your reluctance to share FTL technology?" and the disturbing, "Do your people ever invade others?" Despite my initial skepticism, the ambassador declared the event a success. Entry 24. Our time on Earth is drawing to a close. With only a few days left in our diplomatic exchange, I've noticed a change in the ambassador. He appears physically unwell, his movements slower and more deliberate. On the advice of his peers, we have confined all further meetings to Earth, sparing him the strain of space travel. In a private conversation, he finally explained the abrupt shift in his approach after the asteroid incident. He admitted that his inquiries about justice systems had been born from a need for reassurance. He sought to understand how we treated those who committed transgressions, but also showed virtue, those who saved lives but caused harm. Sorry for saying this. Those who saved lives but caused harm. When we told him that our justice depended on the severity of the crime, he seemed relieved. Some crimes cannot be undone, he agreed. But it's comforting to know you also value leniency when it's earned. He went on to explain that justice was not a universal concept among humans. With nearly 200 nations on Earth and 6 colonies in space, they still struggle with differing definitions of fairness. Yet, the shared value, the balance between punishment and mercy, seemed to bridge the gap between our peoples. Entry 25. The ambassador's condition is worsening rapidly. His health has deteriorated to the point where our meetings last only a few hours each day. The remaining time is spent analyzing the increasingly large volumes of information being released by his staff. Most of this data pertains to their military capabilities and their potential to adapt to space warfare. Our discussions about extragalactic threats seem to have unsettled several of the military leaders among his species. They are now deeply concerned about how much they would need to change in order to align with the standards of our confederation, should they decide to join. Upon reviewing their military history and current capabilities, we realized that a complete overhaul of their armed forces would be necessary. Over 90% of their military strength is tied to ground-based operations, while the remainder is largely composed of outdated oceanic navies and aerospace forces that are no match for even our escape pods, let alone our Juggernaut-class defensive ships. Sinatra, one particular detail that caught my attention was their nuclear weapons. According to one file, a now-defunct nation once possessed a weapon known as the Bomb of Kings, capable of producing a yield over 200 times that of the bomb we use to divert an asteroid. Such a weapon could have reduced our diplomatic cruiser to radioactive dust, yet it seems all weapons of this magnitude were decommissioned and converted into power plant fuel decades before our first contact. What struck me the most was the restraint shown by these seemingly warlike people. Despite their history of conflict, they managed to create such devastating weapons without using them. Humanity's history records over 2,4,0,0 nuclear weapons developed during 2 global arms races within 2 centuries, yet only 2 were ever used in warfare. End try 26. It has now been 360 days since our arrival, and the human ambassador is dying. Neither their medical technology nor ours, had it been offered, could save him. He is suffering from widespread organ failure, a condition his staff has privately confirmed to be symptomatic of heavy metal poisoning. I am in utter disbelief. How could this have happened? Why? We have done nothing to harm him, nor have we seen any indication that others aboard the ship might have. The hateful messages directed at us from Earth's surface have neither increased nor changed in tone. So, who could have done this? Entry 27. In a shocking development, the human ambassador has contacted me directly from his deathbed. Not the other ambassador, nor the captain, but me. His voice was weak, yet his words carried an undeniable weight. He revealed that he had known about the poisoning since one of our tours of the United Nations, where someone had slipped the poison into his drink. The realization came to him only after his doctors estimated the exact date when the poisoning had occurred. He confessed that he had no idea who the culprit might be, but requested that I inform our ambassador and captain while ensuring that no one else learned of this revelation. So right there and then, the revelation goes like, when I asked why this was to remain a secret, his answer was cryptic. He said he wanted us to make a decision. Before I could probe further, he ended the communication. His reasoning unsettled me. I could understand the desire to keep the matter discreet, especially with the perpetrator unknown. But why would he place his trust in us, aliens who had known him for less than a year, while seemingly doubting his own crew and diplomats? If he suspected us, he surely wouldn't have told us about the poisoning at all. Entry 28. The human ambassador's courage and foresight continue to astonish me. Even in his final days, racked with illness and pain, he orchestrated a move so audacious that I am still trying to comprehend it. On the final day of our conference, he made a live announcement to his entire species, revealing that he had less than 24 hours to live and that one of his trusted diplomats had poisoned him during a United Nations event. Then, to our utter shock, he included us, the alien delegation, in the live broadcast, streaming directly from the bridge of our ship. My immediate reaction was horror. I silently thanked the stars that we had seldom appeared in front of live human audiences, for surely our expressions of shock and disbelief would have been visible. The ambassador's words, however, carried a calculated purpose. He told humanity that he had informed us of his innocence and that we now faced a critical decision. His declaration left us speechless. Entry 29. The dying ambassador's message was as profound as it was provocative. He addressed his people and us, the alien delegates, with a startling proposition. He explained that for humanity to be seen as a trusted and valuable member of the galactic community, capable of upholding the responsibilities of the Confederation, they needed to prove their worth. And so, he said, it was up to us, to decide their fate. He reminded us that we had the means to depopulate Earth immediately. Namely, the asteroid we had inadvertently diverted toward their planet. Then, through the haze of pain and drugs, he smirked and added that trust was a two-way street. He concluded by leaving us with a chilling choice. We could drop the asteroid, enacting swift and absolute punishment, demonstrating humanity's potential consequences for betrayal. Or we could spare them, showing that we saw in them the virtues he had described: compassion, sacrifice, and progress. And dependability / control regarding certain things we did. With those final words, he ended the transmission. Every 30, there we were, 3 aliens faced with the fate of an entire species. The entire human population, 10 billion souls, was watching us, waiting for our decision. Every communication channel, from radio waves to instant cast relays, was alive with hails and messages, pleading for their lives. 13 years ago. The ambassador finally broke our stunned silence. He addressed humanity with carefully chosen words. We have just witnessed the closest thing to a leader among you struck down by one of his own aides. This speaks poorly of your foresight and unity. You have twice amassed nuclear arsenals under the pretext of potential necessity. Half of your population lives in poverty, while the other half ventures to other planets. Your history is one of bloodshed, as even your own ambassador admitted. Tens of thousands of hostile communications have reached us since our arrival, reflecting the mindset of a significant portion of your people: ignorant, fearful, and theocratic. Oh. And yet you dare to petition us for the right to join the stars, to stand with us against an enemy from beyond the galaxy. He paused, leaning back, visibly weary. Your ambassador has now entrusted us with deciding whether your species should be allowed to exist. Even if we grant you that right, I must say, this is not what I signed up for. Entry 31. The ambassador then turned to me, his expression mirroring the same inner turmoil I felt. As if finding some renewed resolve, he addressed humanity once more, his voice firmer this time. Yet the very man who entrusted you to us believed you were worthy. He spoke of shared virtues: compassion for family, the willingness to sacrifice, and an insatiable curiosity. Nothing we have done, said, or shared with him could have achieved as much as our act of diverting that asteroid. He showed us monuments to your progress. In less than 300 years since achieving powered flight, you have colonized 6 celestial bodies, terraforming 2 from barren rocks. A year ago, you did not even know of our existence. And yet, your ambassador believed that you were deserving of our trust and that we were deserving of yours. The ambassador stood then with the captain and me following suit. He turned back to the camera and spoke his final words. A greeting lasted a year. Humanity, let me now welcome you to the galaxy. Entry 32. Life has become rather chaotic since our decision. A new human ambassador has been appointed, and the United Nations is undergoing significant restructuring. Their efforts are focused on streamlining decision-making processes to ensure the planet speaks with one voice, rather than through fragmented ideologies. The process was expedited by the swift identification of the individual responsible for poisoning their former ambassador. He passed away mere minutes after hearing our decision to accept humanity into the Confederation. I cannot deny the emotional toll this ordeal has taken on me. Though I have observed diplomatic affairs for centuries, I never expected to feel so personally invested in one. When the diplomat responsible for the poisoning was apprehended, I experienced a wave of relief mixed with a profound sense of sorrow. Representatives from the other 28 members of the Confederation have begun to arrive, each eager to officially welcome humanity into the galactic fold. Yet, not all has been smooth. The UN Security Council has made it abundantly clear that they expect our ambassador to take point in representing our alliance. Backlash has been significant, both from humanity and within our ranks. Many on Earth have criticized the decision to entrust the fate of their species to a single alien ambassador. Protests erupted, some regions nearly descending into open rebellion. He shrugged. Adding to the tension, human media outlets have been harsh in their critique of our ambassador. His initial hesitation during the asteroid broadcast, those fleeting moments where it seemed he might actually condemn humanity, has fueled distrust. His comments about their history and internal divisions were also cited as evidence of bias. Even within our delegation, grumblings have emerged. Some feel we have been burdened with an unfair responsibility to lead an unpredictable and volatile species by example. Entry 33. Still, I can think of no better individual to lead humanity into the galactic community than our ambassador. With centuries of experience and unparalleled patience, he has proven his ability to navigate even the most delicate of situations. Given the chance to eliminate what some perceive as a dangerous and impulsive species, he chose instead to embrace them as equals. It was the correct decision. As for me, I have proposed a symbolic gesture to solidify our alliance, using one of our freighters to transport the largest asteroid we can find into Earth's orbit. There, it would serve as the foundation for a new space platform, a truly neutral ground for humanity's future participation in the Confederation. The idea was met with cautious optimism, especially from the new human ambassador. His predecessor's death, though tragic, seems to have galvanized a shared vision of unity. Yet, challenges remain. The galaxy is a complex and convoluted place, and humanity's entry into it has been anything but conventional. Their diplomatic methods, poisoning, ultimatums, and bold declarations are not likely to be welcomed warmly by other members of the Confederation. Still, I remain optimistic. Humanity has demonstrated a resilience and adaptability that is unparalleled. In time, I believe the rest of the galaxy will see them as we do, a species with a rightful place among the stars, ready to contribute to the defense and enrichment of all spacefaring peoples. End of journal.